Greetings and good morning, fellow targeted individual. The quiet purge in our nation, based on gang stalking, is based on targeting peaceful targets. Essentially, these targets face terror by proxy. Covert harassment networks are essentially terror-related threats which are hidden in plain sight. Why do the perpetrators target non-combative people? Well, they're often chosen and sacrificed. Non-combative individuals often hold inconvenient truths, whistleblower potential, or disruptive clarity. They're not violent, but they are dangerous to deception. Neutralizing them through psychological warfare is cheaper and more deniable than direct confrontation. Peaceful targets are easy to discredit. Their calm demeanor can be reframed as being unstable, paranoia, or delusion. This allows institutions to engineer acts based on plausible deniability while deploying intense harassment. Non-combative individuals serve as testbeds for behavioral engineering. Their reactions are studied, mapped, and archived to refine PSYOP tactics for broader deployment. This can occur through university offices of community engagement being given contracts and through defense contractors, and so on. Targeting peaceful individuals sends a message. No one is safe. It promotes fear, discourages dissent, and conditions communities to self-police. The sacrifice isn't just tactical, but illegal and concealed by those with immunity rights. Often, the target's clarity, integrity, or refusal to conform mirrors what the system cannot tolerate. The sacrifice becomes a projection of institutional insecurity, a purge of people viewed as inconvenient. The operatives involved are often groomed through desperation, ideology, or coercion. Their sacrifice is psychological. They're trained to dehumanize, surveil, and provoke without questioning the mission. Many are suicidal, terror-related threats in disguise, hollowed out, repurposed, and deployed. Historical records and declassified documents reveal that the CIA has covertly supported and engineered operations that contributed to terrorism, violence, and regime destabilization, often under the guises of national security. Covert engineering of violence and destabilization is seen in our perpetrators' operations. These operations often involve arming militias, spreading disinformation, and provoking civil unrest. Our enemies also have provided support for violent proxies. False flag and psychological operations do at times promote violence, something that I'm against. Some covert programs aimed to manipulate public perception and provoke violence indirectly. These included planting fake documents, staging attacks to blame opposition groups, and using media to incite fear. The enemy uses terrorism as a strategic tool. The CIA has historically used chaos as a strategic tool, supporting factions that would disrupt governance, provoke violent backlash, or justify foreign intervention. While the CIA rarely engages in direct terrorism, it has supported such through groups which have utilized tactics such as bombings and assassinations and civilian targeting through outsourcing. These affiliations are often masked through third-party funding or covert logistics. Narrative engineering is seen by the threat actors due to their desire to control media narratives and intelligence leaks. The CIA has shaped public perception to justify violent interventions. These include exaggerating threats or framing resistance movements as terrorist organizations. This could be a group of people which are comprised of ex-NSA, ex-FBI, ex-DOD, Fusion Center employees exposing a wrong. These are unarmed, non-combative people just exposing a threat to the Constitution. These operations often breach international law and undermine our democratic process. Many CIA-engineered plots have led to long-term instability, civilian casualties, and the rise of extremist groups, creating cycles of violence that outlast the original mission. We've seen this in other countries where we've gone in and invaded, and then all of a sudden it's like every day 100 people are getting bombed in Iraq while shopping and buying food. Because these actions are covert, they often escape public scrutiny and legal consequences, despite their destructive impact. Gang stalking is psychological warfare, not justice. Let me be clear, gang stalking is not a myth, a misunderstanding, or a fringe delusion. It is a covert psychological operation. It's a domestic psyop engineered to isolate, destabilize, and destroy individuals through coercion, through baiting tactics. They want to control you. They're utilizing psychological warfare. At its core, gang stalking is a strategic pattern of harassment. It relies on outsourced skits, street theater, and coordinated surveillance to provoke, discredit, and ultimately silence its targets. These tactics are not random. They are designed to mimic mental illness, provoke violence, and to erode the target's credibility, all while shielding the perpetrators behind layers of plausible deniability and national security clauses and NDA agreements. This is not just harassment. It's corruption at a large scale, a system that exploits legal loopholes and weaponizes community actors and manipulates law enforcement into complicity. Across the country, mutual aid agreements and veteran groups and national security partners have created a shadow framework where local law enforcement are urged to treat targeted individuals as subjects of interest rather than victims under the guise of investigations. These individuals are denied support, protection, and due process year after year, state after state. When a person is flagged in a Fusion Center database, they are marked. From that moment forward, they are surveilled, followed, and harassed in public places, malls, parks, workplaces, by civilians trained to perform these psychological skits. These repeated encounters are not coincidental. They are deliberate attacks on your rights, designed to push the target towards a mental breakdown or forcing the target to retaliate. So that can be used to justify further repression. This is not law enforcement. This is behavioral engineering. Even more disturbing is the abuse of the Intelligence Identities Protection Act, which is increasingly used to protect, not to protect legitimate covert agents, but to shield criminal actors embedded in these operations. This legal shield allows perpetrators to operate with impunity while victims are gaslit, discredited, and denied justice. Let's be honest, this level of sadism requires grooming. It requires individuals who are trained or conditioned to dehumanize others, to follow orders without question, and to participate in psychological torture. These are not ordinary citizens. Many are contracted assets, interagency partners, informants, or intelligence operatives trained in surveillance, manipulation, and plausible deniability. This is not just a threat to individuals, it is a threat to public safety, civil liberties, and national integrity. When psychological warfare is deployed against whistleblowers, dissidents, or anyone deemed inconvenient, we no longer live in a democracy. We live in a managed perception state. Gang stalking is not grassroots. It's not spontaneous. It's not justice. It's psychological terrorism engineered through people in positions of power and trust. These outsourced skits are based on wearing you down, The individuals who participate in these operations, whether knowingly or manipulated, function as terror-related threats in disguise. Their behavior is not just criminal, it is strategically destabilizing, designed to provoke violence, erode sanity, and to destroy lives. These are not ordinary citizens. They are desperate terror-related threats, individuals groomed or incentivized to carry out psychological warfare against whistleblowers, so-called dissidents, and inconvenient targets. Their actions mirror the tactics of suicidal operatives, relentless, irrational, and self-sacrificial, often with no clear personal gain. That level of commitment requires backing, financial, logistical, and institutional. No one harasses a stranger for years without support. No one performs coordinated skits in malls, parks, and workplaces without a network, a script, and a shield. This is not surveillance. It's domestic terror theater, protected by mutual aid laws, shielded by intelligence loopholes, and disguised as an investigation, so that way those busted cannot be put on a police report. When law enforcement shields these actors under the pretense of national security, they're not protecting the public, they are enabling psychological warfare and violating the very principles they swore to uphold. And if any incident occurs where law enforcement participated or concealed such acts, its offices could be partially liable. This activity poses a clear and present danger to public safety. Gang-stalking operatives and their institutional backers don't just fear exposure, they respond to it with escalation. The moment a target begins to speak, document, or connect dots, the harassment intensifies. This isn't a coincidence. It's ritualized sacrifice, a strategic response designed to destroy the target's life. See, exposure is reframed as instability, paranoia, or aggression. Escalation is engineered to push the target towards violence, collapse, or silence. The sacrifice of the exposed target becomes a warning to others. Stay silent or you'll be next. This pattern reveals a deeper truth. The system is not defensive, it's performative. It treats exposure as a breach in its narrative architecture and responds with psychological warfare to preserve the illusion. Covert engineering, surveillance, psyops, and coercive control are being normalized secretly in the United States. When institutions fabricate threats, they undermine public trust and democratic oversight. False flags can escalate into real violence, destabilizing trusted networks and bringing immense demoralization to agencies. And such acts harm innocent people, which is unethical. Whistleblower suppression via targeting is often used to discredit or isolate those who expose inconvenient truths. Public trust is collapsing, and voter disenchantment is rising. Many Americans feel politically homeless, viewing both parties as corrupt, performative, and disconnected from real issues. For whistleblowers, strategists, and truth tellers, this moment offers a chance to expose threats to the homeland and to our safety, which may help reframe political dysfunction by exposing credible threats to the United States. Domestic distractions, such as war, has historically been used to unify fractured populations, distract from corruption, and justify surveillance expansion. In a politically polarized climate, conflict can be engineered as a narrative reset. Domestic terrorism thrives in shadows through disinformation, coercive control, and institutional denial. When citizens document and share facts, they disrupt the narrative architecture that enables these threats to siphon off money from our government for bogus operations. Traditional counterterrorism relies on top-down surveillance. A citizen-led model reframes truth tellers, whistleblowers, and community activists as distributed intelligence nodes, mapping threats from ground up. Why this matters, fellow TIs, that we're exposing this. The U.S. is in a liminal phase where institutional trust is collapsing and adversaries are rising, and some will take advantage of these programs for false flags. The chances for domestic terrorism are increasing in our nation through psychological, covert, and engineered acts by clandestine groups, which many believe Charles Kirk was impacted by. Citizen-led documentation is the most powerful countermeasure and the most feared by those who rely on secrecy. The enemy presents an escalation pattern. When a targeter accidentally or deliberately exposes a stakeholder, such as a covert operative, institutional partner, or protected informant, the harassment often intensifies, not because the target is dangerous, but because the exposure threatens the architecture of control. Here's how that dynamic typically unfolds. Exposure, escalation, and forced relocation. A target may document a skit, name a handler, or connect the dots that reveal institutional affiliations. Even if the exposure is subtle, it can trigger panic within the networks that are behind this. Some targeters may intentionally escalate harassment to provoke the target to exposing a stakeholder, then use that exposure to justify increased surveillance or pressure. This may explain why people from Virginia, especially Langley, Virginia, have been exposed utilizing active duty personnel, citizens corps, sheriff's associations, local cops, fusion centers, partners, radical feminists, hordes of associations, and people working on U.S. Army bases, trained in psychological warfare. Once exposure occurs, the system reframes the target as a security risk. They'll falsely label the target as being an unstable threat, even if the exposure is factual and peaceful. This reframing allows for legal shielding, denial of services, and intensified harassment. The goal is to make the target's environment so hostile that they voluntarily move away. This serves multiple purposes. It disrupts continuity of documentation, breaks community ties, and resets surveillance architecture. It allows institutions to claim the issue has resolved itself. The harassment becomes a smokescreen to punish the target. Not to punish the target, but to protect the exposed stakeholder. This is especially common when the stakeholder is a covert operative, informant, or institutional partner embedded in a mutual aid or intelligence framework. So now you know why fusion centers, they lie, why they protect their partners, just like police and DOJ and other partners. They always lie. And it's documented on video because they have to protect their partners in a court of law. It's not about protecting your rights, and I'm not saying they're all bad. Exposure is a breach signal. When harassment intensifies after exposure, it confirms the target hit a protected node. Documentation becomes critical. Every escalation should be saved. So, relocation is not retreat, it's tactical repositioning. If forced to move, the target is then flagged, though, at times, to emergency management partners. A completely new set of contractors may be utilized against the target. From 8A business vendors, CIA assets, DHS assets, Army assets, defense contractors, neighborhood watch groups are informed. Local veteran and civic groups are informed. Masonic partners may be on your tail 24/7, depending on where you live, or veteran groups. So the target is then harassed all over again. So if you move somewhere, try to move somewhere where you're not going to be harassed as much. You may want to go to Cuba, Russia, maybe rural areas of China, Nicaragua. You want to reach out to the government. You may want to file injunctions at their court mentioning what you went through. So that way, if they are busted outsourcing and the police suspect they're a CIA asset or a contractor, when they are brutally interrogated, it'll look good if they come forward as being operatives from overseas. Anyways, fellow TIs, about to end this video here in a moment. Let me pause it for 1 second. I got to share something else. When you're a targeted individual, you may find yourself going to nature more, to get away, to heal from all the trauma you've experienced. And don't be surprised if you go to places like this where you're just facing a lake. I'm in a parking lot facing a lake where locals have lunch. I come out here every few days. And don't be surprised if they come in and face towards your car. When you see all the cars facing the lake, they may put their high beams on. They may flash their lights, flick you off. They may park behind you on the sides in front of you and box you in. They may do it as you enter a school, literally surround your car doing tactical moves. I've documented this since my 20s. These clandestine acts, fellow TIs, typically revolve around outsourcing to partners, contractors. See, what the enemy is trying to do is, fellow TIs, is to keep you in a state where you feel disrespected. And you're never going to find any member of law enforcement in your community willing to help you with this. You're essentially on your own. Now, they will help their own and their own family members. But when you experience this, you're not going to find any support. There's too much money in this. Essentially, fellow TIs, what we are exposing is an extreme terrorism threat. What they're doing in our country, fellow TIs, surpasses what was promoted during Terrorism. We live in a country, fellow TIs, with many different races. We live in a country where weapons can be easily gained with just money. Personally, I don't carry weapons. I don't harm people. I don't harass people. I don't break any laws. I don't receive phone calls unless somebody's trying to sell me something. If I receive phone calls, it's just from family, but I don't receive phone calls from people that I know. Gang stalking, fellow TIs, disrupts and destroys your life, because when you talk about this to people, people assume you're doing something wrong. Any member of law enforcement right now can submit a request to Google and access my Google Drive, my YouTube account, my emails. It'll show my IP, my phone number, email. I'm not using VPNs. I'm not in hiding because I don't commit any crimes. I just simply buy food, I walk, I e-bike, I stay home, work on my education. That's it. I have nothing to hide. Anybody within the NSA or any agency can clearly see I'm not committing no crimes. So the enemy, fellow TIs, since my early 20s, has flagged me at hospitals, schools, libraries, even in residential neighborhoods. They're starting to tone down because I think they're starting to see that the only terrorism threat that we face in the TI community is these people, which don't respect the Constitution. They're just profit-driven, sadistic, and I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm not saying that the CIA is completely bad. I'm not saying that the NSA is bad, the FBI, or law enforcement is bad, or fusion centers are bad. There's many good people in these groups. I know because I've observed some. I've spied. Because I have to figure out, am I dealing with a terrorism threat? I mean, who goes into a U.S. school to harass somebody when they're simply working on a case to get justice? Who enrolls into a classroom just to harass somebody? Who goes to neighbors with a fleet of white cars asking people to whistle if I'm seen? Who goes with women into supermarkets to harass a grown man with families, where they walk, where they eat, where they shop, where they worship? These are sick people, and they don't want to take any accountability. I've been talking about the same thing for a long time. So, stay strong, fellow TIs. Learn a different language if you have to. It can't hurt. It'll maybe give you purpose for living. For me, I have purpose, but there are some targets that have no purpose. They've left marriages, they've left school, they've left work. Some don't even go to doctors no more because they've been harassed at clinics and lobbies. They've been harassed on the road. I know some targets that have just sold their cars. They're sick of it. Being harassed where they drive, where they eat food. Everything is ordered and brought to them. That's no way to live. Save money up, fellow TIs. Look at other countries. Even if it takes 2 to 5 years. Even if you only have a few thousand. I've met people that have come to this country, fellow TIs, from Ireland, different places with hardly nothing, and they made it. Build up your skills. Roll the dice. What do you have to lose? Go to a country where you can rent at a low price, where you can live with American standards. That exists in the world. You just have to look for it. Avoid going to places where there's lots of Freemasons and foreign contract opportunities. You don't want to go to a place where you're going to be targeted by a bunch of freaks all over again. Anyway, stay strong. God bless. Peace.